All right, so let's address the elephant in the room. This is not a Hamburglar shirt. The Hamburglar wears a white shirt with black stripes. This is a cream shirt with navy stripes on it. All because you're colorblind doesn't mean you need to take it out on me. I haven't had a cheeseburger in weeks. I'm not out there robbing people for hamburgers or something like that, but I may rob you for your money. But we're not here to talk about my dress attire today. We are here to talk about the latest Nintendo Financial Investors Q&A, because a lot of it was centered around price increases for the Nintendo Switch 2. There's been lots of talks and commotion about this, obviously with components going up in price, and Nintendo has finally addressed the elephant in the room, the real elephant in the room, as far as what to expect from upcoming price increases for the Nintendo Switch 2. If this is your first time on the channel, hit that subscribe button. Without any further ado, let's go ahead and talk about what was discussed. So, the first thing I want to talk about within this documentation is the fact that, like I said, this was a key component of the Q&A, and Furukawa was kind of getting pressed on this because it's obviously something you're seeing across the entire technological industry. The first question we're going to talk about is, how are raising prices for memory and other components impacting the profitability of Nintendo Switch 2 hardware? If the cost of components remains high, is there a chance of a price revision? To which Furukawa said the following: "We do not disclose details regarding individual components, but we can say that we are working to secure stable supplies of memory components by holding discussions from a long-term perspective with our business partners," aka Nvidia, probably. As a result, the rise in memory prices did not have a significant impact on hardware profitability in the third quarter. In addition, we do not expect any significant impact in the fourth quarter. So, of course, that's talking about the fiscal year, which is different than the regular year. This goes from March to March. So the fourth quarter of this being, of course, from January to March for the fourth quarter of this year. But then he talks about the future of it, and that's where you got to kind of raise a few eyebrows. As far as any future change in the price of Switch 2 hardware, no decision has been made at this time. Any decision to change the price will be determined comprehensively, taking into consideration not only profitability, but other factors like the platform's installed base, sales trends, and market environment. So I find that to be very interesting, because it's not necessarily about, you know, there's no mention of the one thing that Nintendo is always known for, and that is affordability. Like, the Switch 2 is a premium system. I get it. You know, it has a nice build quality to it. It's obviously a lot more capable of a system than the Switch 1 is, from what we've seen from the library thus far, mostly from third-party companies, because Nintendo hasn't really cooked quite yet, I feel, on the Switch 2. But you're seeing lots of very competent third-party ports on the platform with some amazing results considering the hardware. But that, you know, not mentioning affordability whatsoever in this statement is kind of bizarre to me, because that's what Nintendo has been known for. That's been one of their pillars going into video games. They've always been an affordable price option for people, and it seems like with the new regime, it's much more of a business as usual sort of standpoint than really caring about how this is going to impact the customers. Now, I do understand that, you know, if you read between the lines, that's kind of what's been talked about, but Nintendo has always been very forward with this way of thinking. Like, this to me is much more mysterious. Like we're hiding the fact that that we're concerned about the affordability of the system, which never has really been the case with Nintendo. And then moving along, we have an interesting question about the hardware sales, because in Japan, the system actually exceeded expectations for the first 3 quarters, but in the West, it was a bit softer, and Furukawa actually said that they didn't quite make what they wanted to in the West, and that was asked about by saying, hardware sales in Japan have accounted for a larger than expected proportion of total hardware sales. Considering that most procurement costs are in US dollars, do I understand correct that profitability is declining due to the continuing depreciation of yen? Also, what is the backdrop to a higher proportion of hardware sales in Japan? To which Furukawa said the following: Hardware-related procurement purchases are primarily made in U.S. dollars, so given the current exchange rate environment, the better-than-projected hardware sales in Japan will have a downward effect on gross profit and operating profit. The backdrop to hardware sales in Japan trending better than our expectations was the release of Pokemon Legends ZA, Switch 2 Edition, and Kirby Air Riders during the holiday season, building on the initial momentum of Switch 2 hardware. We believe that users in Japan saw these titles as an opportunity to transition to Nintendo Switch 2 at a relatively higher rate compared to Switch owners outside of Japan. And that's because you really like it's pretty clear as to why that is. When you look at the software lineup, there hasn't really been like a big marquee title beyond Mario Kart World and Donkey Kong Bonanza, for the Switch 2 that's going to have a mass appeal in the West. Some of these games are obviously hitting in Japan, and that's very good, but when you make Pokemon Legends ZA for the Switch 1 along with the Switch 2, I mean, yeah, you get a little bit of better graphical fidelity, but it's essentially the exact same game, so is there really a big benefit for people wanting to upgrade? And plus, you forgot one of the biggest caveats to that whole discussion. Japan has a specific SKU that is a region lock system that is substantially cheaper than the unregion lock system. There's nothing like that in America. So I don't get like why. I mean, I guess I do understand it, but I don't understand why you don't do like a run of US region locked systems to where you can't play Japanese games and stuff on there, but it ends up being cheaper. Like, I understand because, it's manufactured there and Japan is the home base and stuff like that, but you're out here to sell consoles. Like, is the market of, not having any sort of restrictions and being able to play games from any region, is that worth charging a substantial amount more for a system? I guess time will tell with that as far as system sales are concerned, but I did think that was very interesting to bring up. And then the final thing I want to discuss in this is another question kind of going back to the price of this system, and the shareholder said the following: you explain that if memory prices continue to remain high, this might put pressure on hardware profitability next fiscal year and beyond. My understanding is that Nintendo's policy has always been to avoid selling hardware at a loss. Simultaneously, I think that now is the time that you need to expand the adoption of Switch 2 hardware. Will you prioritize expanding the installed base or ensuring the profitability of hardware? So basically saying like, hey, are you going to be adjusting these prices higher so that you are profitable on the hardware, or are you going to try and stay as a lower priced alternative so that you can expand the install base and then make money on software and stuff like that? To which Furukawa said the following: the current rise in memory price is happening at a pace that exceeds our expectations. In general, the profitability of hardware tends to improve the economies of scale, and we want to continue to reduce costs as much as possible through mass production of the Switch 2. With regard to not selling hardware at a loss, what we are focusing on is on profitability on a global basis. There are various external factors, such as fluctuations in exchange rate, but looking at the global picture, we have traditionally tried to avoid situations where individual units are sold at a loss as much as possible. It is difficult to predict the changes in the external market that are currently taking place, but I think it is not an appropriate approach to be excessively influenced by short-term trends. The second and third year for the Switch 2 are very important, and if we can expand the hardware installed base, we can use that as a basis to greatly expand software sales. We will take this into account when making decisions and flexibility consider various options. So, kind of what I was saying there. If you can make the money on software and your profit margins are a lot thinner on the hardware, like, that to me just makes more sense. Like, I never fully understood like how much money these companies are actually making on hardware. And I get it. It used to be as the generation went on, you would see smaller prices. Prices would go down for these systems because of the fact that they were cheaper to manufacture. But I don't like how Furukawa said this is like a short-term trend with the component prices going up, because it's not a short-term trend. Like best case scenario, prices start to, stabilize in 2028 maybe? Like, this isn't something that's going away. More and more data centers are being built that require all this AI stuff. How many jerk-offs have you seen on your Facebook and Twitter and Instagram who said, oh, I asked ChatGPT to make a picture of me based on what it knows about me, and then they change that to their image or something like that? First off, how the fuck does ChatGPT know a goddamn thing about you? You are a random NPC. You're not like an online personality or something like that. You're just a random ass person. And the fact that ChatGPT knows that much about you should scare the shit out of you, because it shouldn't know a damn thing about you. However, we got to make those funny memes and stuff like that. Companies are integrating generative AI into stuff. So I find that to be a very interesting answer to all of this, because walking away from this Q&A session, as far as my confidence on the price and whether or not this has swayed me to believe that the Switch 2 won't go up in price, I think, if anything, if you read between the lines with this, they're setting themselves up for a price increase. You notice they didn't say the calendar year, they said the fiscal year. They said, Q4, which is June to March. What happens beyond that is a completely different story. What do I constantly say on this channel? Yesterday's price isn't today's price, and today's price isn't tomorrow's price. When you see what's going on with things like the Steam machine and stuff like that, how Valve of all people is having trouble getting components at a reasonable price. They can't even figure out when they're releasing this system or what the price of the system is going to be. It's a very scary future. And, the fact that affordability, was never mentioned in any of this, it's a different era of Nintendo. It's a more business focused. I guess the one positive is saying that, years 2 and 3 are going to be very important for the system means that there should be a decent amount of software that comes out from both first and third party companies. So hopefully the second half of 2026 starts to kind of increase upon that, because from what we've seen thus far, Nintendo's releasing games, but I wouldn't exactly say that these are system sellers or anything like that. At some point in time, you're going to have something that's big and exciting to make people want to get the new system, although it has been selling pretty well, all things considered. But anyways, guys, those are just my thoughts on this. Do you think it's a more positive situation? Do you think I'm overreacting to this? Or do you think that this is indeed what is going to happen? And as always, thank you for checking out this video. If you are new to the channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button. Be sure to like, comment, and share. I do have an update on my bunion. I got a Dr. Scholl's wrap weird thing, with Velcro and stuff on it. It's been helping a lot. I can actually walk on my foot now. Usually in the morning for the past 2 days, it's been hell to get out of bed. Much better today. So we're on the up and up with this. And as always, I'll catch you guys on the next video. Later.